It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
One more time for old time's sake.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law, live audio wrestling.
And let's go. We're now smoking with the best.
Welcome back to The Law. It is John Pollock with you, along with Dan the Mouth Lavransky. Coming up this hour, we are going to be hearing from Chris Jericho, who I had the chance to speak with earlier this week, and your opportunity to win a dinner with Jim Ross when he is here in Toronto in 2 weeks, along with tickets to his ringside event happening at Second City in Toronto. But now we shift focus and head down to San Jose, California, and welcome in the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer. Dave, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I wanted to start things off by chatting about Power Struggle, but not New Japan's version.
Yes.
TNA's version.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Dave, we have just gone through the entire week that was in TNA, and probably a book could be written, probably by you.
Yeah.
When you look at both sides at this point, Anthem Media and Billy Corgan, the sides respectively, like, this is just turning into a mess, and a public one.
Yeah. It's a really interesting thing. I mean, Billy Corgan is I know people who knew him in the music industry, and this is how he is. And he really wanted the company, and if he doesn't get the company, he's going to create a scene. And the thing is if it's sold, he's entitled to a certain amount of money. Obviously, Anthem is willing to pay him a certain amount of money, but they want him to drop his lawsuit, and he doesn't want to drop his lawsuit. He still thinks that he can sue to get control, and just based on the way that last court case went, or the hearing this last week, it looks like it's going to be really difficult for him to get control, but he can get 36%. But I'm not sure what 36% of TNA is really worth.
Yeah, exactly. What's even the point of that?
Yeah, I don't know, because unless, it depends on, I mean, it upsets the apple cart in the sense of if the thing was going to end up as 85% Anthem, 10% Aerolux, and 5% Dixie Carter, Billy Corgan having 36% changes all those percentages. So that changes the game a little bit, but it's 36%. And he's got partners that don't want to deal with him. So it's not like if he had some of the partners were sympathizing with him, and then that would be a different story. But that's absolutely not the case right now.
It's really bizarre. It's like this strange, intense takeover is trying to take place, with both sides trying to come up with some sort of strategy to get what they want. And in the end, will it end up destroying the whole company?
Well, I don't think that it will. I think what's going to happen, whatever was going to happen to the company, I mean, the company was going to be pretty much devastated. Anthem saved them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And Corgan could have saved them as well. I mean, it's crazy because it looked like they were this was really going to be it. And now all of a sudden there's two people who are willing to save them, although we still haven't figured out how anyone can make any money with this company at all.
Well, and also, too, Dave, I mean, we heard that Challenge TV in the UK this week, they're dropping TNA. That's a big chunk of TV rights there. I mean, if stuff like that continues...
Right, and there's no guarantee on Sony 6 because they breached the deal by not going there this year.
Right.
So, I mean, they're still there, and that's their most lucrative contract, but... I mean, they could be dropped from that at any minute. So, I mean, you're left with the Fight Network deal in Canada, a South Africa deal, and a U.S. deal that doesn't pay anything.
No.
And you're not running any, and there's no real other revenue because you're not running shows.
And also, just on the other side of it too, with Dave Lagana leaving the company, there's one of your top creative guy that's writing shows. He's leaving too. I mean, these guys could figure out the business end of it, and there might not be anything left.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Lagana was very close to Billy Corgan, so I mean that pretty much told the story there. I think that when Billy Corgan was out, I think that maybe he had too publicly sympathized with a guy who the rest of them thought was the enemy, so that really put him he was in a very bad political situation.
Dave, by the end of all of this, I mean, if we're looking ahead to 2017, where does Dixie Carter end up at the end of this? Because I think at best she's looking at a figurehead role, and maybe not even that.
I mean, I don't know what the deal is with how she constructed the deal to put Anthem in charge. If Anthem has the right to get rid of her, I wouldn't be shocked if they get rid of her. But I'm guessing that one of the terms of the sale, because it always was that she would at least have this public position that so it doesn't look like she failed. Because I remember with the whole thing with Toby Keith, this was a couple of years back, when he was negotiating to buy the company, and I mean they were ready to make the deal. Bob Carter was ready to make the deal, but Bob Carter insisted that Dixie had to stay on, and even if it wasn't in a power position, it had to be a public power position. And Toby Keith was just like, no, I'm not doing, and that's what happened to TNA.
Dave, I just had a quick question in terms of the TV that has been done so far, and references to still hear references to Billy Corgan. We see his image on the.
He was still on TV this week,
right? I was just curious if you've heard anything about TNA grabbing stuff that still hasn't aired and somehow taking him out of it, or are they just going to let it?
I have not heard that, but it wouldn't shock me if that happened. But I think that that they don't really have the ability to retape stuff. So it may be for storyline reasons, just stuff that they have to put up with until the end of this set of tapings.
Right. I'm just curious if they, all of a sudden we see some disclaimer that, that's it, he's done with the company, or if they'll just let it slide.
Maybe they'll shoot a segment where Dixie Carter emails Billy corgan to announce that he's been relieved of his... They have to write that character off somehow. I mean, he was put as an authority figure on TV.
At worst, they have to make it, do something on those Hardy shows, right?
That's what they can do. They can have Hardy throw pumpkins at him or something like that.
Yeah, they've done that before, too.
Yes.
Did you see the pumpkins on Raw?
Yes, with Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows.
Oh, of course.
A coincidence, of course, Dave.
Yes.
Well, it was Halloween. Maybe it may actually have been a coincidence.
I thought it was with the actual pumpkins, but the fact that Corey Graves said smashing the pumpkins, I thought it was a little too cute to just be a coincidence. But moving on, Dave, we have not talked about this yet on this show, but the combination of the UFC finances, which were recently reported by MMA Junkie, yourself as well, there was an extensive rundown of that, combined with Ronda Rousey's announcement this week that this is definitely one of her final fights, I think giant ramifications for 2017 and some unintentional leverage that falls onto the plate of not just a Conor McGregor, but certainly a George St. Pierre if Ronda Rousey is serious about winding this down, which it feels like she is.
She is. Mm-hmm. I believe if she loses this next fight, she'll never fight again, and if she wins, she's probably only going to fight one or two more times. So, I mean, the thing is, and I have no idea, it boggles my mind she's fighting on December 30th on a Friday.
Yeah, that is really weird.
You already know that this is like if you're doing a fight that's going to do 250,000 buys and you're costing yourself 30% of that, that's okay. That's not that bad, right? But if you're talking about something that's going to do 1 million buys and you're going to cost yourself 25-30% because it's on a Friday, that makes no sense at all.
Yeah, have you heard anything why they're booking it that way? They're not saving her for a bigger, more prominent show?
I've heard no explanation, and I don't understand it.
How do you think that show would have done on New Year's Eve, Dave? Do you think that would be just too risky?
Well, number one, you can't do it in Vegas on New Year's Eve. It would just be impossible. I wouldn't do it on New Year's Eve if it was up to me. If it was up to me, I would do it on whatever the Saturday is in January the 7th or whatever. To me, that would be the day to do it because they've done the New Year's show on the 3rd, 4th, 5th before. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be between Christmas and New Year's. It can be right after. And there's nothing wrong with January 7th as a date. I just don't know why December 30th isn't a good date. The 31st is too risky. I mean, it's like maybe, if you have like the greatest fight in the world, I think New Year's Eve might help you because it's so big and everything. Like if Mayweather and Pacquiao was on New Year's Eve, I think that would have been is even bigger than it was or as big as it was. But
didn't they consider doing the Anderson-Chael rematch that year before Chael popped after the first fight? I'm pretty sure that was the fight they were contemplating doing that one New Year's Eve, but then that fell apart.
Yeah.
So it's something that's never been experimented here, and I don't know if you'd really want to risk a Rousey fight as that experiment.
No. And if if you didn't, I will say this: if you did New Year's Eve with anything but a giant fight, I think you'd get killed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's just not worth. It's not worth it.
That segues into next Saturday night, Dave, and I know you hate this question, but as we head into fight week here, are we looking at a pay-per-view record? I think we are next Saturday.
Well, it's the best card they've ever done, and it is Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez. It's just we haven't had that thing like we had with the bottles or with the press conference that
That's
McGregor
on Thursday
had with Nate Diaz. And we haven't had that moment that like just the John Jones Cormier thing.
Right.
That just like the average person sees this crazy scene and just goes, "Oh my God, I got to see these two guys fight." I don't know exactly what you do because every one of those things wasn't planned. But Conor, certainly is going to be running around doing a lot of media, as will Alvarez, and I guess it's just going to be because I mean the thing is like if you're a fan of UFC, it's great because this is the deepest card.
Yeah.
But for the casual fan, you need something crazy to break the record. But maybe first show in Madison Square Garden and the fact it's the New York market and all the publicity is going to be in New York, I think that that's going to help a lot too. And Conor's on the show, and Conor's a very intriguing character. I think it should break the record, but you just don't know.
And what would you do, Dave, to put a number to it, buys wise? What do you think here? Can it do $2 million?
2 sounds high to me right now,
yeah.
But on Friday I may change my mind. 'Cause, the thing with UFC is it really is the Wednesday through Saturday that determines
right.
It. And you just don't know what's going to happen and how strong ESPN's going to go. And again, if someone's going to say something crazy, if someone's got if Conor has some brilliant idea, all those things play a factor in this. And if it just connects. Like Mayweather Pacquiao, all of a sudden that day it was like everyone in the world wanted to sort of see the fight, and if they can get something like that where it's just like this is the greatest UFC card ever, and it's one of those things where non-UFC fans go, you know what, I just got to see this is the greatest card ever. Then the sky's the limit, and it is the greatest card ever, so it's a possibility that'll happen.
And I really do think being in the New York market finally after all these years is going to play a huge part of it.
Well, Madison Square Garden the first time, there's something larger than life about Madison Square Garden. It's not like, and again, plus the fact that it really is a fantastic card.
Do you think in any way, Dave, that just because of the level of insanity this election has reached, that any of that New York media attention is going to be reserved for the fallout where it might have been reserved for the UFC had this been just an open week, so to speak? Or do you see those as different?
It's going to be sports media and not news media.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't think so because again, like ESPN's not going to be covering the election like 24 hours a day,
right?
And the cable news stations that may still be covering the fallout, they weren't really going to be covering UFC that hard anyway. So I don't see that as an issue. Yeah.
Well, it is certainly going to be a gigantic card next Saturday night. We have to get on out of here, Dave, but what is coming up in the Observer this week?
That is a very good question because it's probably all going to start happening the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Build up to the UFC card and
whatever goes on with TNA, the latest with TNA.
Whatever happens this week with TNA, whatever happens the next 2 days with WWE in Europe, and the Tokyo Dome card. Obviously I'll be writing about that. They got the press conference in a couple hours.
Yeah, that's right. That's later tonight. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you as always for joining us. We will be reading. You can catch it at WrestlingObserver.com, and we'll speak with you this time next week.
Okay, have a great week.